Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And we're going to do 2 comic industry videos in one day. Can you believe that? Can you believe that?
It's a Sunday.
It's a Sunday.
So,
it's a slow news day. So we'll talk about comics because comics are like dead last in the list of priorities for a lot of people right now. I'm going to be honest. And it shows. It shows because there's not a lot of interest in the comic book industry unless it's bad news, unless it's to point and laugh at the failings of the comic book industry. But it's sad. It's just a really sad industry right now. We're going to talk about Marvel and DC not doing well. Scholastic is still doing very well. But also Graham Nolan posted this on Twitter. He's talking about Herb Trimp. I think it was Trimp. I can't remember if it was Trimp or Trimpy, but he was the gentleman who drew Wolverine. He drew Hulk. He drew G.I. Joe. Legendary artist, and he was basically pushed out of the industry when he was in his 50s.
Well, I remember when we first met, you told me about how they would burn you out and then get rid of you.
Yeah.
And how it was like something that a lot of artists were concerned about because, some people just they couldn't change up their style, so they didn't have longevity. Or some people, they just would work to death until they were just like tired. And then next,
Yeah, and a lot of times it was like you were only as good as, your relationship with your editor. And when the editors would switch out, they would want to bring their own regime in. And this happened. And we had people that, worked in the industry for 20, 30, 40 years. And then they were out of work. And I always thought it was really sad. I would go to Artist Alley and I'd see these legendary creators that had phenomenal careers. Basically, I hate to, be that guy, but kind of panhandling, like, buy my prints, buy my this, buy my something, and then you ask them, well, why, you were fantastic on Spider-Man, or you're fantastic on Hulk, or why aren't they calling you? And they're like, I don't know. They just don't call me anymore. Was it something you did? No, I just don't call me anymore.
No, because you use tissue. Bye.
You're used tissue. And all these people now that are...
Take that how you will. Anyway.
All these people now that are delighting that they've got control of the comic book industry. I'm like, these people actually had sales behind them.
Yeah, I was going to say they're delighting in that, but the comics are falling off a cliff.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that. So maybe that actually is maybe the point is like, well, they're not going to get rid of you because nobody else is going to work as cheap as you do. And they
did it to themselves.
They did it to themselves.
Because you set the price. You said, I will do this for this amount of money to get in there. And then you're mad when you don't get more money.
Yeah,
I'll draw another discussion.
I'll draw your comic for $50 a page. Sure. Whatever.
It's killing me. I'm underpaid. Well, who's the one who took the money?
I don't understand why I can't survive in Manhattan. So let's talk about this. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. Get woohoo if you do.
Woohoo.
So yeah, let's go out here to, this is the Tilting at Windmills, which the Comics Beat puts this out every year talking about book numbers. Now, these are just book numbers, but we know that Marvel and DC are not selling nearly what they used to sell. In fact, the highest selling monthly comics right now are the Transformers and G.I. Joe comics.
No, we're talking, those are the floppy comics.
The floppy comics.
Right. I think most people just would rather go with graphic novels or things like that.
But this is Brian Hibbs' invaluable analysis. Analysis of the 2023 book scan numbers. So Marvel and DC combined are less than 10% of the book market. And this is like they were trying to pivot to that. And the thing with the floppies is a lot of times the floppies were considered fodder for the book market. Like, oh, we're only doing 6 issues of this series because we're going to bundle it up into a graphic novel, and that's how we're going to sell it. And Ms. Marvel is a huge seller in the book market.
Yeah.
she's a massive hit. I think at first, 10 years ago, maybe, but then the quality fell off. But that's what they're trying to say. Like, oh, you can't look at the monthly comic book numbers, guys. You got to look at the book market. That's where we're making all of our money. You just don't see it. No, it's less than 10% combined. And that's with DC doing Batman books that have been perennial bestsellers for like 30 years. Dark Knight Returns and Batman Year One and all that stuff has been sold.
They combined for fewer than 750,000 books sold, 10% of what Scholastic sold.
Wow.
Well, that doesn't surprise me because the Scholastic, you have to remember too, like they're sending out books besides going to the bookstores and stuff. They're sending out the book orders sheets to schools. They have the book fairs usually in the fall and the spring. I know I used to run them. They're getting it into the hands of kids that the parents will buy them books, and they're getting it into the hands of readers. So I'm 100% sure Scholastic does really well because they when you're given a sheet, you can pick from one of these books. And it's a reward, and kids love book. I loved the book orders as a kid. I was all about it. Our kids loved it as they were all about it. So parents are buying their kids books. Of course, they're going to sell a lot. It's given out to a ridiculously large audience.
Marvel only had one book in the top 750, while Viz, Disney, Scholastic, and Abrams beat every single comic Marvel itself published.
I believe it.
DC had a bad year with their lowest sales since 2004, down 25% from 2022 in the book market. Even with their highest ever number of titles in the total list. In 2023, they only had 14 titles in the top 750.
Oh, no.
In 2013, they had 130. That's a huge and troubling drop. But then
it's only like 10%.
Yeah.
Of what it was. Oh.
But laying off nearly your entire sales marketing team is not a great strategy for growth. I don't think they care.
Some of the people you're hiring is not exactly a great strategy for growth either, but hey.
Yeah.
You chased off your audience. It's 2013?
Yeah.
Well, you guys all started a lot of this shit in 2012 to 2014, and it shows. So, maybe if you hadn't, chased certain demographics and got rid of people for other people that will take a lot less and their art looks like shit, you might not have that big of a problem now because everybody's going to manga, which has better stories, and the art looks good.
So they're saying that IDW had the best year of any traditional comics publisher in the book market. But they said The Last Ronin, which I know is huge, and they're making a movie based on it. It's the biggest Ninja Turtle story in forever. Yeah, 148,000 copies in its second year on the chart.
That doesn't sound like very
compared
good.
To manga, it's like nothing.
I was going to say, it doesn't sound very good. I mean, people do that on crowdfunders.
They're talking units, 148,000 units. Yeah, Berserker sold over 615,000 copies.
I mean, to be fair, it was Berserker, but still.
Yeah, but it was, I mean, not in the crowdfunding, but later, and I think the crowdfunder definitely caused it, buzz. But there's a lot of talk around this comic. People said it's the best Ninja Turtle in forever.
148,000 copies sound that great because I know
compared to manga, it's
compared to prose even. It's just like, what the heck?
Yeah, so this is not good. This is not good. And I think the book market's down overall. I think I've heard it's actually down overall. But again, manga, I'm sure, is dominating most of the sales chart. Dogman, of course, because you can. How
many copies did Dogman sell?
Dogman number 11 was best-selling graphic novel with more than 1 million units sold.
I rest my case.
Yes, the graphic novel market in the U.S. sagged from pandemic highs. Everybody was locked in their houses. They had nothing to do. I'm sorry, they're not going well. And so look, what we're doing is we're basically getting to the point. The point is you can't depend on the comic book industry to take care of you. That is the point. I'm seeing this more and more as a lot of the creators I grew up reading are, retirement age now. Some of them not even, but they're still basically retired, not through their own choosing, but because the comic book industry has decided that it's done with them. And these are perfectly viable creators. I mean, it broke my heart to hear that Larry Hama, who wrote G.I. Joe for years, and created so much of the backstory of G.I. Joe and should be getting millions of dollars from Hasbro, is working at 75 years old because he has to. It's not because he wants to, it's because he has to.
Yeah.
But at least he's working.
We hear this a lot, though. We hear this a lot. But usually they're working in other fields or they're trying to do crowdfunders like GoFundMe and stuff like that to try to get money to survive because, they don't care. And I'm sorry, it is what it is. This is one of the reasons we don't do it anymore.
Yeah, it was like we looked at the long-term future and other than, get your stuff picked up in, Netflix or something or a movie or something, there is no future really in the traditional comic book industry, just making comics, selling them through the traditional. I mean, it's very limited. You can do it yourself. The people that are actually doing it and doing it well are doing it themselves. And this has been true for years. I mean, going back to Image. Someone
mentions Image. That's what I thought of.
Yeah.
When they don't have people wanting to be unionized so they can tell people what they can and can't make comics of.
Oh, I would have shut that shit down. I would have been like, look, if you think you're overworked, and I've said it before, if you're overworked, you think you're overworked, that's one thing. But if you're doing it just because you want to have editorial oversight, you're not the editor. You're making the copies.
Go work someplace else.
Go work someplace else. Go start your own publisher. Anyway, this is Graham Nolan, notable comic book writer, worked for many, many years in the comic book industry. And I think he was basically pushed out, partially because of politics, I think, and partially because you get to, I hate to say it, but you get to a certain age and they're just like, you know what? You're just not the flavor of the month anymore. It doesn't matter how many hundreds of thousands or even millions of copies of books you sold for us. We don't want your stinky old man comics anymore. So this is Graham. He said 24 years ago, Herb Trimp wrote this op-ed piece in the New York Times. We're going to go through that. And I heard about that and it was horrible. He had to change careers. This is the guy who was the first artist to draw Wolverine. It's a cautionary tale I posted every year since then on the anniversary of his death. The importance today of the independent comic movement and crowdfunding options can't be overstated after reading this. The big two publishers are not your friends. They will chew you up and spit you out when they're done with you.
Use tissue.
And you will be left with nothing. Creatives don't choose a paycheck. Start building your future today. Create and own your properties. You will be happier. So here is the article in question. And just refresher for those of you who don't know Herb Trimp. He worked for a very long time in Marvel. And yeah, he basically got pushed out. And I remember hearing about this and I was shocked. He was one of the artists, I think he was at one of the comic conventions here in Pennsylvania. And at that point, it would have been Eastern Pennsylvania. And I think I actually asked him, I'm like, well, why aren't you working for Marvel anymore? And this would have been like 98, 99. And he's basically like, they won't have me. They won't have me. That for whatever reason, I'm just not cool anymore. This was written in 2000. Old superheroes never die. They join the real world. So he got fired at 56 years old. He had 2 children, still in college, no job. And I remember reading this. This is 96, 29 years he worked for Marvel Comics. Things had started to get shaky 2 years before. Comic industry had a crash in the 90s.
Yeah, I remember the 90s, yeah.
You know, they flooded the market with spin-offs and endless number ones. By 95, a new wave of artists and writers had supplanted the older pros. My employer was giving me less and less work. This guy joined Marvel in 1967. Said March 15th, 1995. Fantastic Four has been cut. Fantastic Four Unlimited is the only regular comic I'm drawing with pages reduced. My work is cut in half. Called Nell, his editor, I guess, who apologized. He tried to get me more work to meet the four-page weekly quota. Things didn't look good. April 1st, I began to hate drawing comics. It becomes harder and harder to compete with the new creative stars. Experience doesn't seem to matter. By May 27th of that year, he turned 56. Send my application today to the State University of New York's Empire State College. The Center for Distance Learning offers credit for life experience in independent study for people like me who can't attend regular classes. So he's looking to retrain at 50-some years old. He got accepted. A mentor is going to help design a degree program. November 20th, they canceled his book, No Warning. Went down to New York yesterday. All the editors are either in meetings or at the lunch. Talked to human resources at Marvel. The lady seemed embarrassed. Said maybe I should consider retiring.
Oh.
I told her I wasn't going to hold the gun to my own head. They have to shoot me themselves. But the family, I need the healthcare benefits and income. December 6th or 15th of that year is 95. No matter what I say or who I call or write at Marvel, I can't get assigned another book. I've tried reason, outrage, guilt, trips, and begging. I haven't been able to scrounge together enough work to meet my monthly quota. God, this is heartbreaking. The place is in shambles. When I press, they admit sales are down, and so is morale. Scuttlebutt is more layoffs are coming. January of 96, more firings. 19 people gone, including his editor.
Yeah.
Yep. By January 8th, worked on my own comic strip about a minor league baseball team. He's just not really, it's not going very well, basically. January 11th, finally talked to my tutor for my first Empire State course for Far Eastern History. January 23rd, the job thing is a downer. I'm generally excited and optimistic. Tom DeFalco at Marvel called me after dinner to see how I was doing. When he was editor-in-chief, he kept me working during... That's the thing, too. People don't understand. If you have a good relationship with your editor, that's the person that actually gives you the work. And if they like you, you're getting work. So a lot of times what happens is you're like, I haven't seen this pro working in a while. Well, who's the editor of the book? Because if it's a different editor than it was, that's probably why that person's no longer there. When he was editor-in-chief, he kept me working during another slow period when all the new editors were hiring their pet artists. Great chat. He knows some people at King Features. That's probably about the comic strip. Rumors. Marie Javins, who actually, I know her somewhat. She worked on the Duck books. We worked on the Duck books together.
Oh, is that? Yes, I do.
Yeah. But she was at DC Comics, and they got rid of her, too. Same trouble. Getting the odd coloring job, no substantial work. Checks keep coming, but this is getting weirder and weirder. February 3rd, I feel like I'm turning into somebody else. This is awful. So we're seeing what's happening in real time within the span of a couple of months. Now, this kind of stuff is happening all the time in comics right now. But back then it was unheard of because everything was copacetic for months, for years. You know, you'd get a job at Marvel or DC and they would keep you unless you wanted to go. And in fact, they were angry when like Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, and all those guys, because historically, like you would stay at Marvel for 20 or 30 years and make them money, and people weren't doing that anymore. Nobody's going to answer his calls by February. March 5th, I'd decided to go for a BA in art. This just goes on. Got rejection from, God, this goes. Where's Marvel? Why bother? Don't even call them. I mean, it just goes on and on. I think if I remember correctly, it ends with him getting a job in another field. And he just is like keeping track of everything that happened. Let's get
it's like his diary kind of thing.
This is diary. He's basically, God, telling you to go get out of the industry. And he's a teacher. Yeah, I remember this. I remember reading this, and I remember there were stories about it. He basically trained to work in another field. And but I know he was still doing conventions because he did a convention in the late 90s. And I do remember, I'm like, why aren't you doing, probably, I had no idea. At that point, I had no idea this was going on because, you know, the internet wasn't as big as it is now. But like, I was like, why aren't you working at Marvel anymore? Well, they won't have me. And I just did a convention. Last Wizard convention I did, and there were.
Oh gosh, that was a while ago.
That was a while ago. It was probably. Oh God.
One thing you learn about Kneon is he has no concept of time.
I really don't.
So what is a week to him has been like 4 or 5 months for everybody else.
That is called age. But
well, I'm older than you.
Okay. Well, I don't have a concept of time, but no. So we're talking like maybe 8 years ago. I did it, and I used to do panels with Danny Fingeroth, which was awesome. But I would ask these guys because there were all these great like Marvel and DC editors that were legends. Like everybody knew why aren't you working for these companies? Why aren't you? And it's saying that they won't call me back. I'm like, but you were like the biggest thing there, and they won't call you. No, and that's why they were doing conventions and selling prints and stuff. It's sad. So. Took us a long way around, but basically comics won't take care of you.
No, which we've been telling people that for a long time.
So you're standing for these companies and you're pushing people to the breaking point, sometimes past the breaking point, given what happened to you.
And you're paying how much less than before.
And they're paying how much less, and is it worth it? Because at the end of the day, you might fight tooth and nail for the honor of DC and Marvel Comics, and they're not going to give a shit about you. They're going to chew you up and spit you out or sell the company off or something.
They were doing it back when comics were a lot bigger.
Oh, yeah.
A lot more popular. Yeah. You know.
Yeah. Yep. So there we go, guys. That's comics. It doesn't love you. It's the industry you may love, but it doesn't love you back. So we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, rants. We'll talk later.
Bye.